will be, yeah, you'll go first, and then you'll also give the, you chose to give the closing statement. Good evening. My name is Maria Dela Cruz, and I am the president of Newberry High School Student Government Association. I will be the moderator for this evening's debate. This is the fourth annual commission debate hosted by the student government. Before these two candidates seek your votes for seat 1, we would like to thank you all for attending tonight's debate. We're happy to present our program to you tonight. With us this evening are candidates for Newberry City Commission Group 1, incumbent Commissioner Ricky Coleman and Jessica Baker. Here is the format we will follow in tonight's debate. Each candidate submitted 4 questions to me via email. No other person has seen these questions except Scarlett and myself. We would like to stress that the Newberry Student Government Association did not come up with these questions. They were generated by the candidates themselves and by you, the audience. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to use our wonderful volunteers in the back. In blue, we have Austin Demko. In red, Katie Parker. And in purple, Shelby Seberg. The candidates did a coin toss to determine the order of the questions, and Commissioner Ricky Coleman won. Commissioner Coleman chose to give a closing statement, which means that the opening statement will be given by candidate Jessica Baker. Following opening statements, we will begin with the first set of questions, which focus on the future of the law enforcement in Newberry. Candidate Commissioner Ricky Coleman will get the first question and have 2 minutes to respond. Candidate Jessica Baker will be allowed 1 minute of rebuttal time, which will go back and forth between the candidates throughout the rest of this debate. Following this format, in between each section, there will be a 3-minute crossfire in which each candidate may ask his or her. This question is from Commissioner Coleman. Oh, sorry.
Hi, my name is Jessica Mrozinski Baker, and I have been a resident of Newberry for 11 years. I have 2 kids in school here. They're age 6 and 7, and one of the draws to Newberry for us when we moved here originally was that there are 3 schools within Newberry. They're highly rated, and they could be in walking distance, but they're in a short distance from each other. I currently work at the University of Florida as an accountant, and I have my law degree from the University of Florida as well. I graduated in 1999, and I am running because I have always been active and used my voice in both community service and volunteering, and I wanted to participate more in our local government and have more of a voice. I figured it was time to put my money where my mouth is and actually run instead of just email my commissioners all the time and show up to meetings. Thank you.
First off, I'd like to thank Ms. Baker for being here tonight, Mayor Marlowe, the NHS student government on their efforts in making this debate happen. I really appreciate that. I'm going for this. I'm Rick Coleman, or Ricky Coleman, or Richard Coleman, and some call me Richard Earl. But tonight, everybody's wanting to know, but I usually go by Ricky. My wife is Marcy Coleman. She's a local appraiser here. My oldest is Rhett Coleman. He's got his degree at FSU and is with Disney Productions. The middle child is Reese Coleman, and he's a senior at Buholtz High School in the finance degree. That's what our finance program. And he's off to Troy University to play football. And my beautiful daughter is Riley Coleman, and she's on the varsity volleyball team here at Newberry. When I took on this job 4 years ago, this city was floundering and was trying to find its way. People were hungry for change, and that's what we gave them, a clean sweep of the old guard who had watched over this city for well over the last decade. We were faced with some tough challenges from the former Nations Park that had several design and operational issues to infrastructure, which was long past due being updated to to a budget that centered more around wants than needs. There was a lot of work to be done. We got it done. I've heard of some of my critics ask, but what have you done? There's a lot more to this job than what gets seen on TV or on live stream YouTube. It also it's also a collaborative effort between the 5 of us that sit on this dais along with the mayor and the rest of the staff. And each of us, now she got more than 2 minutes. My insight and knowledge of how most financially stable municipalities, so I skipped, you messed me up there. I think part of being a public service is being as open and honest as you can, and I can tell you that I'm not the first choice to present an item or concern to the county commission. I would if I needed to, but I feel we have others who are more comfortable and capable of doing so. I'm also not one who is savvy with social media.
I'm sorry, we have to cut you off at the 2-minute mark.
With social media. In fact,
Commissioner
anyone
Coleman.
who follows me knows it's my Achilles heel. Does that make me a bad person or ineffective commissioner? Absolutely not.
Commissioner Coleman, we're going to have to cut you off. I'm sorry. Thank you. First question to Commissioner Coleman. After the vote on the High Springs law enforcement contract failed, you were one of the votes against the sheriff's contract. If that vote had failed, Newberry would have been without school resource officers in all 3 schools. What plan would you have suggested to keep SROs in our schools if the sheriff's contract would have also failed?
That's an easy one. The way I voted for this was, number one is, the backstory is, which a lot of people don't know, is that the SROs that were here were going to be with High Springs if it came over. The big thing, what a lot of people don't understand is, it's just like what's coming up here right now. The state of Florida is fixing to give us all SROs. And we're really then, what's this enhanced services? Number one, I'm $777,000 is, $777,000 is a lot of money for our citizens here in Newberry. But we were not going to lose SROs. It was not going to happen. Me and one other on the dais voted for High Springs, and I'm proud of that vote. Being a fiscal conservative, I am very, very proud of that. But I'm 100% SROs, and before I made the vote, I also told I'm truly, truly respect every law enforcement officer out, including the High Springs law enforcement that was here. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Candidate Baker, would you like a 1-minute rebuttal?
Sure. One of the things as a citizen that disturbed me about the High Springs vote is that if it had actually passed if the sheriff's contract had also been denied with the High Springs contract, that would have left us without both the enhanced services, which I know we can debate whether we actually get those or not, but definitely without the SROs. Even High Springs had mentioned that they would not be prepared to bring those to the table until October or November, and the sheriff at that meeting had indicated she would have been willing to perhaps give us a stopgap for that, but if High Springs hadn't been ready, even if that vote had passed, we would have been without. By voting down the High Springs contract, and then if the sheriff's contract had voted, both of those would have been off the table. So we would have had to have an additional plan in order to bring those in. So we had no third option that was discussed at the meeting.
Thank you.
Alrighty, first question to Ms. Baker. How will you lead the city when it comes to law enforcement? Are you in favor of Newberry starting its own police department, or are you in favor of continuing with ASO? And please explain your response.
I think that we need to start looking at our options. Obviously, with the way the MSTU is structured between the county and the sheriff, we're left with a lot of uncertainty. And until the last minute, when we have to make our budget decisions, we may not know what that rate might be. And since the sheriff has given us she's pretty much said that she's going to start at whatever the MSTU rate is as her asking price, we need to explore our options because that MSTU is still going to be going up, particularly with the lawsuit between the county and the sheriff. They're going to restructure how they decide it, and they're both going to be in a much bigger debate at the end of the budget cycle as to who is going to shoulder more of that burden. So I think now is the time, since we have a 3-year contract, to start exploring what our options are, what our city is going to look like in 3 years, and how we can fulfill the needs of our community, both with the SROs and our law enforcement needs, as we head into the next contract being over. I know that 2 feasibility studies have been done on a local police department here. I know that Commissioner Farnsworth indicated at those meetings about the High Springs and the Sheriff's Office that those were high. I've seen some figures that the Economic Development Committee had put through, and those are really high too. So while I am in favor of us having our own municipal police force, I'm not sure that we are in a fiscal position to actually have that. So we're going to need to look at our other options, and the sheriff isn't necessarily an option.
Thank you. Can I just ask that you guys speak up a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. And then Commissioner Coleman, would you like a 1-minute rebuttal?
Sure. Can you ask a question in a 1-minute rebuttal? Yeah. Can you not turn it on yet?
Oh, yes, sir.
How do you feel about a Tri-City agreement with High Springs and Alachua and Newberry? Is where I'm at. Where do you sit on that? How do you feel about that?
Are we supposed to answer the
Oh,
question?
no, you were
or-
just, that was like the 1 minute to
No,
answer.
I had your boss back there saying, yeah, you could ask a question.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
I think a Tri-City Police Department could potentially work. We would obviously need the cooperation of the other 2 municipalities involved. And I have a very bad feeling that the county will want to also weigh in on this, given the lawsuit that they have with the sheriff.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Now we have a question for both candidates, and the response will be held at 2 minutes. It's about law enforcement also. The state recently voted to fund SROs for every school in Florida. Please state for the record the effect you believe this state money should have on Newberry's contract with ASO. And this is directed first.
Me?
Yes, sir.
I believe that with and there's so many different things that are in that contract, and I honestly believe that somewhere in that contract that we'll be able to go back to the sheriff and say, hey, we want our money back. That's where I'm at on that. There's got to be some kind of out clause. I know we have a certain amount of days. I'm not sure exactly how many days that is that's in the contract. But with the state now coming in, and this is off the hip, but I'm thinking 2/3 of this contract is the SROs. Might be a little more. So the enhanced services should not be that much money. So that's where I'm at. That's where and we need to stay on top of that as soon as this is done.
Thank you.
So my understanding of the new legislation regarding the state SROs is that it's going to restructure the safe school money that we've been receiving from the school board. Currently, that funds about 20% of the SRO, and then of course our sheriff's contract, we're paying for 80%. And the safe school money is complex because it is a calculation they use to give to each district, and the district gives to each school, and they want to also increase the amount of SROs at each school. So with how that is given to each school board district, my fear is that when we add the SROs that the other schools need in the county, that perhaps we will still wind up in the same situation that we're at, being that it's this very complex algorithm as to how they hand out the funding. Even if we do receive more money, we would then obviously have it come off, hopefully, our sheriff's contract, since we would be receiving more from the school board. And, you know, if we're getting 40%, then we should only be paying 60% to the sheriff. And that is, of course, if they don't decide we don't need more SROs per their calculation and per what the state requirements are, because that may then fund those new SROs, and we'll still be in the same position we're in right now.
Thank you.
Also, at any time during the questions for both candidates, you can ask us again if you want that question repeated, just in case you guys want that. Okay. Okay, so we are going to start round two. So our second question is to Commissioner Coleman, and it is, if Newberry were to start seriously discussing Springs County or being annexed by Gilchrist County, what effect would that have on the future road and school facility improvements?
Right now is not the time for Springs County. It's way too early. We need to worry about Newberry and not put our efforts of this dais to trying to leave Alachua County. That's my feeling. Could it happen? Yeah, it could happen. Probably not in our lifetime. But right now, we need to worry about the growth of Newberry, the commercial businesses that we need to work hard to get here. Springs County don't even need to be on the table or any of those questions right now.
Thank you. And then, Candidate Baker, would you like a 1-minute rebuttal?
Sure, but I'm not going to use the whole minute. I just agree with that position and think that we are not in any position to discuss Springs County or an annexation with Gilchrist at this time.
All right, thank you.
Second question to Ms. Baker. Have you received donations from outside groups? If so, how can you ensure us that you will represent Newberry residents and be able to adhere to local concerns and not to those outside groups? And can you adhere to the conservative principles you have publicly claimed to hold if that money has come from liberal groups?
I have not received any donations from outside groups, and I love this community. We chose to live here. I am a fiscal conservative. I handle money, well, not handle money, but I deal with budgets and grants and as part of my job. And when you're getting money from a government, the state, and you have to adhere to very strict regulations, you obviously pay very close attention to how that money is spent. Because I also deal with international grants and have to deal with international laws and regulations, we are very, very, I keep my eye very closely on how we spend our money, where we spend our money, and that we're making good use of the money we spend. I don't think that my ideals are in conflict with adhering to a fiscally conservative philosophy.
Thank you. Commissioner Coleman, would you like a 1-minute rebuttal?
Ms. Baker, are you are you active or do you support some of these left-wing liberal groups like Pantsuit Nation, Women's Movement March, Antifa? Do you support any of these three that I have mentioned?
No,
or
sir.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Alrighty, and then our question for both candidates is, please explain your vision for Newberry's economic future. What will you specifically bring to the table to help the vision become a reality? And Ms. Baker, you will answer that one first.
Could you repeat that,
Oh,
please?
yes, sorry. Okay. Please explain your vision for Newberry's economic future. What will you specifically bring to the table to help that vision become a reality?
I believe that we need to bring more business that suits Newberry into Newberry. We have a downtown that has seen a lot of change recently and is much emptier than it has been in a while. As we get new people involved, we want to have something to keep them here. A lot of people work at UF, work in Gainesville, work outside of Newberry, and don't spend much time in Newberry at all. I think that we have, in the last 4 years, moved too far away from looking at the opportunities that are out there for grants. That money is out there, and we have made use of it in the past. The sidewalks along 15th were a grant, and that we should look for the grants out there that will support the changes we want to make to the city, whether it's the sewer lines, the water lines, economic development, business grants. And we need to make use of the referendum vote and start looking as a city and a commission in relation, with our economic development committee at looking what we can use that money to bring people and what businesses we can bring here.
Thank you. Now we will begin the crossfire, and we will start with. Oh,
You
sorry.
go, Rebecca.
That was my fault. Sorry.
In the last 4 years, we've implemented a capital improvement plan, and we have funded it. We've infrastructure that's went out towards 202, with 3 large landowners that are that's going to partner with the city. That's coming. We've our fine mayor spent time with Ted Yoho, speaking of grants, which I'm not I like grants just as long as it's within me. Something that doesn't have a lot of things tied to it. That's what scares me on some of this stuff when it comes to grants. But he spent a lot of time with Ted up in Tallahassee, and I believe Mike New, our city manager, was with him. But we're heading in that direction. The infrastructure heading out to 202 is in the right direction. So that's about all I got on that.
Thank you. Now we will begin the crossfire, and we will begin with candidate Commissioner Coleman. Yes, sir. Because we did the question for both.
I'm supposed to I can come up with any question, or back and forth, back and forth. You look nice tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, if you.
You go ahead.
Well,
Okay.
I want to go back into it. With the people that are donating to you, none of these people are left-wing radical. I know you can go the other way with me as right-wing radical. None of these.
So all of the people who donated to me are people I personally know.
Personally, no.
Yes.
All right. Okay. You can hit me now. Go ahead.
I really don't have anything for Grassfire for you.
Okay, okay. I'm good too.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Alrighty, so that means we'll be starting round 3. And the third question goes off to Ms. Baker first. Ms. Baker, you have supporters on social media who have insulted and derided Commissioner Coleman. Do you approve of that behavior? If so, why? If not, why have you not denounced that behavior?
So I assume we're talking about the infamous Kyle Baker. I actually thought that by my statement that I was not, since I had been questioned fairly by quite a few people about it, that I was not and related, or that he was not me, that I did not know him. I thought that had been a strong enough statement that I was not in support of the tactics being used. I don't think that one of the things that I have been around in Newberry for quite a long time, the politics part, because my parents have lived here since '98. And one of the things that has always bothered me about Newberry is that for some reason, as a small community, we tend to make this way more personal than it needs to be. We should encourage participation in our local government. We should encourage people to run for office. We should encourage people to participate in our process. And when you make it personal and you threaten people, and we've had candidates in the past who have been threatened to the point of carrying a weapon on them, that, you know, why does it have to be so personal in Newberry? It really doesn't. And I do not agree with the behavior that was exhibited on social media. You walk a fine line on social media, because as soon as you make any comment about perhaps what is known as an internet troll, you automatically associate yourself with that, for good or bad, depending on how the people feel. And no matter what I say, the people who think I perhaps am Kyle Baker, no matter what I said, are still going to think that. And that's the lovely part of social media.
Alrighty, thank you. And then Commissioner Coleman, would you like a 1-minute rebuttal?
I did put out on social media that I did not think that Ms. Baker had anything to do with that. After being on here for 4 years, I know where she was at, and that's got to be pretty tough. But I do have one question for Ms. Baker. You call yourself a fiscal conservative, but you're part of Newberry Blue. Can you explain what that group is and why you're part of that?
Sure. Newberry Blue is a group that is a small group of Democrats in Newberry. It is no secret that I am registered with the Democrat Party. I don't understand why that has to be any issue at all. You can be fiscally conservative and you can be socially liberal, and that has no effect on how you decide budgets for the city.
Thank you. Third question for Commissioner Coleman. How do you feel you've represented our lower income and minority population as a commissioner?
Well, as we've, the big thing is, are you asking in the demographics of where in Newberry? Because if you're considering MLK, that area, some of the parks that we've had here, everything that has come in front of this dais, when it comes for us spending money, I voted for every time. We had a, I guess it was more of a forum at the MLK Center a couple of weeks back, and that was actually pretty much a question, and I've always voted. I've always been there to help Reverend King and the rest of them. I'm here to do it. That's it's in my heart. They're part of Newberry, and they need their fair share, and that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Ms. Baker, would you like a 1-minute rebuttal?
I have no rebuttal.
Okay. Now we will move on to the audience questions, and this one's addressed to you, Ms. Baker. What would you do differently than Ricky Coleman if elected?
I think that I would bring to the table someone who is detail-oriented. I look at the items in front of us differently because I have a law degree. I look at them and I research the issues. I want to bring to the table someone who is willing to raise the bar for the commission. We've had instances where I think that we have not utilized our city attorney and our city manager the way we could by asking them questions and having it affect how we vote. I think we need more transparency, and I think we need better accountability. And I think that I bring somebody who is respectful and willing to bridge the gap with the county and maybe form a better relationship so that we're not always the whipping boy of the Alachua County Commission.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
You do get a 1-minute rebuttal.
Okay. When it comes to, first off, dealing with, I heard, with the city manager, I meet with the city manager for at least 1 hour a week, especially before things come on with the dais. Also, I bet you, if you ask Jordan Marlowe, I would say that he, which is our mayor, I think he gets tired of my phone calls and texts. It's constant. People think that the only time that things are happening is sitting here on the dais. That is minimal. 90% of the time, we pretty much, after studying for hours on Sunday night before so you can be really fresh, we pretty much know which way we're going. That's me. Sunday nights, thank God my church don't have church on Sunday nights, so that's what I spend my time doing. Transparency. You can't get more of an open book with Rick Coleman. I can tell you that. Big shoulders, and if you don't, I tell you how it is. It might not be right
Already,
at all.
a lot in
Thank
our
you, Mr.
1-minute
Coleman.
time. Thank you.
It says 9.
Oh, it does? Oh, I apologize. You can continue if you would
No,
like.
that's all right.
Already. Okay, sorry. It's just, okay. All right, this is another question to candidate Baker. Have you moderated your political opinion since running for commissioner?
Have I moderated my political opinion? I think that I have tried to highlight my strengths and what I bring to Newberry in a way that probably some of Newberry would not respond to well. Obviously, I have not been shouting through the streets that I am a Democrat, because that has become sort of the rallying cry of what is not allowed in Newberry, I guess, even though we've had multiple Democrats who have sat on this dais who have done excellent jobs. And their political opinions were not a part of their decision-making process. This is about what we want to do with our city. This is about how we see our city. This is about how we all love our city. And actually, I was having a conversation earlier and with somebody at Woodyard, and we all moved here because we wanted to be in Newberry. We love our town. We love what it's like. We aren't here because we want to be in Gainesville or Tampa or Miami. We want to be in Newberry because of what Newberry is. And I don't think that my political registration plays into that at all.
Would you like a 1-minute rebuttal?
I agree with her 100%. This is a nonpartisan job, And up here, you have Democrats, you got you got everything from libertarians that you deal with every day. It's a nonpartisan job, and it needs and I have done a really good job of in the last 4 years not going up and going, well, I'm going to make this decision because you're a Republican. It's not that way. And I'm a registered Democrat myself. But I'm a registered Democrat because I want to be able to actually vote in the county primaries. I mean, if you're a Republican, you really don't get to vote. I know that Mr. Baker, or whoever he is, did put out there that I was a registered Democrat. Well, I'd say majority of the people here, if they do want to vote in the primary for the county, you better be one or you're not going to get a word in. So, but I agree with her on that.
Thank
Alrighty,
you.
thank you.
To Commissioner Coleman, you have called people on social media as snowflakes, bark-eating libtards, and posted derogatory memes directed to women. Is this the behavior residents can continue to expect from you, or do you feel this is an appropriate behavior for someone in public office?
Start the 1 minute yet until I get my notes.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm not the most tolerant person when it comes to some of this, these memes and stuff. I know where this was leading with the meme I had on which was my older son posted on my Facebook 2 years ago. But I think most people, I have a sense of humor. I think most people thought it was funny. I know that it hurt some feelings, and I'm very sorry that that happened. And I'm truly sorry. And I apologize then about the meme that was put on there. If I could take it back 1,000 times, I would. I really do. But it's happened. But it hadn't. It hasn't changed my views of where I'm at. And actually, I never called anybody a snowflake, to let you know that. That was somebody else that called them a snowflake. I was the tree bark eater, which I thought that was kind of funny, but I guess not everybody thought that. So once again, right here, I apologize if that's if it offended anybody, and it needs to be over with. We need to worry about what's going on here in the city and get us staying in the same direction we're heading in right now.
Thank you. Ms. Jessica, would you like to rebuttal?
Yes, so I think that one of the issues with, regardless of whose behavior it is, when it's in an email or on social media and you're calling people names that have written into your city to complain, or on social media and perhaps saying something critical, is that when it comes from somebody who is on this dais, it gives other people the idea that those things are okay. And it encourages that behavior from other people who may not have the same constraints, or the mayor or the city manager calling them and saying, you need to stop this. And it exacerbates that behavior. All anyone has to do is look at our Newberry forums on Facebook and see the type of behavior that people think is acceptable. And when that comes from our commissioners, it really gives the green light to how other people treat people on social media and how we're looked at as a city.
Thank you.
And now we have another question for Candidate Baker. Please tell us how you intend to build a bridge between Old Newberry and New Newberry. And do you think you are able to represent Old Newberry?
So I think that part of the way to build a bridge is by, you obviously have to give some consideration to how our town has been and what is important to us and what is important to the people who've lived here for years, and understand that by growth and by change, you are obviously going to bringing new ideas to the plate. And a way to do that bridge is to incorporate some of the old into your new. So something like agribusiness, where you're protecting the agricultural heritage of this town and bringing it into the new century. Something like the preservation of our downtown and how it looks and the feel for it, and making sure that we retain parts of how Newberry was for how Newberry will be. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and there were some old families with deep roots there who had businesses. And one of the things that our town did was the hotel that the old-time family had built was preserved, and it was kept as a homage to our town. And I think that it's, you know, as we build, we want to keep the feel of our town. It's not just new people. So I think we have the steps that we can take to make that happen.
And Commissioner Coleman, would you like a 1-minute rebuttal? All right. That means we will be moving on to round 4.
Candidate Baker, please tell us your views of the state of Newberry's government. Do you think it's well managed? If so, why? If not, why not?
I think overall that we have come a long way from where we were 4 years ago. As Commissioner Coleman indicated, our budget had been a wreck. We had very little reserves. We had a lot of debt too, and we've come a long way with our budget. The things that I am critical about, that I have been openly critical about, is that we have returned to this commission by email type of thing, where it doesn't seem like some of the ideas are coming forth at a meeting from the commission, that we're finding out most of the business that has already happened and are left with we're behind in the decision-making process. And I know one of the things I was vocal about is the fact that it disturbed me that the first time we found out about the High Springs deal was at a High Springs meeting, while we had given our city manager the opportunity to look at solutions. It seems that it would have been more transparent and perhaps more acceptable to the citizens who showed up if we had actually learned of that at a Newberry meeting before we actually approached High Springs about it. I also think that we have had a few issues where recently we've been involved in lawsuits, and I think that while they have been mentioned at a meeting, that we could have been more forthcoming. And while I understand how lawsuits are, you can't always be forthcoming. I think we need to be open when we've done something that we're being sued over.
Thank you. Commissioner Coleman, would you like your 1-minute rebuttal?
Sure. Well, when it comes to the lawsuits, it's unfortunate. I believe honestly that actually that could have been vetted way ahead of time, and we need to change what's going on, how we're vetting these contractors. It disheartens me that this has happened. But when it comes to the word transparency, you don't get more transparent than me. I mean, I don't hold nothing back. That's where I'm at. You come ask me, I'll tell you. But when it comes to the growth of Newberry, we're going to have stumbles and falls, and it's not going to be perfect. But for the last 4 years, we've come a long way, baby.
Thank you.
Alrighty, and this next question is for Commissioner Coleman. Recently, you indicated that the hiring of City Manager Mike New was your #1 accomplishment as a commissioner. Some residents are concerned that new candidates in this election have an agenda to terminate Mike New's contract. What are your thoughts on that concern?
Well, if you look at the, we just had for his raise, I think I was the only city commissioner to vote fives down. You can only go 1 through 5, or maybe 0 through 5. I voted fives down the board for Mike. Mike is, the first year that we came in here, I believe it was well over $300,000 right off the bat he found that we just, from the previous people we had here. So I'm 100% behind Mike New. Does he have his shortfalls like me? Yeah, everybody does. But I can tell you one thing, Mike New lives, breathes, everything when it comes to Newberry, Florida. He works hard, guys. I've called him many a times, and it'd be 9 o'clock and he's still sitting up here. So my support, yes, is behind Mike New. That's really I got one other thing. He was one of my accomplishments. 43 seconds. Yeah, he was at the time. Yes, he was. And we're 4 years into this, and I can tell you, besides the contract with the fire station with the contractor, and he's been impeccable, totally impeccable, getting things done here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like a 1-minute rebuttal?
No, thank you.
So now we're moving on to questions to both candidates. To both candidates, what are your views on Newberry's rules, regulations, and ordinance? Do you believe they're too strict or too loose? Please provide examples to support your opinion. And we'll start with you, Ms. Baker.
Repeat that, please.
What are your views on Newberry's rules, regulations, and ordinance? Do you believe they're too strict or too loose? Please provide examples to support your opinion.
So, rules, regulations, and ordinances.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You know, I think that I'll use an example. We have a sign ordinance. It is a great ordinance on paper until you start realizing that most of our signs are grandfathered in, do not meet the qualifications, and everything and that we see in planning and zoning, we've seen at least 2 requests for variances on signs because they are not within the scope of the ordinance. And I can understand the attitude that the ordinance came from originally, the sign ordinance, that they wanted our town to look nice and they wanted it to look consistent, and they wanted the signs to not be blaring neon signs. But when 80% of your current signs don't meet the ordinance, then perhaps we should have drafted the ordinance to meet more of our current signs. And because some of the ones that don't meet the ordinance would be surprising and they look fine. There's nothing wrong with the signs. And in that case, I think we probably would have better drafted other ordinance. So yeah, in some cases I think our ordinances are too strict. I know from talking to people the last 5-6 weeks, there are a lot of concerns about our building permits and the process for those, and how long it takes, and whether you're a contractor or a private citizen, and the type of information they need. So there are concerns.
Thank you. Would you like the question
Yes.
repeated? Okay.
Yes. I'm not really happy with our sign ordinance. It hadn't actually, it was brought in 06, and we went and we've done some things. How can you say you're a business-friendly town and somebody puts a 2x2 sign out temporarily, and then we got a guy riding by snatching them up? for this year, that ordinance is being brought back up. And I think we need to be, when it comes to these businesses, but we need to be a little bit more lax. I do agree, though, with Ms. Baker that some of these signs, Lord, it's unfortunate. It's a slippery slope either way you go on that, but if we're going to be business friendly, when it comes to temporary signs and stuff like that, we got to be we got to loosen up if we're going to be a business friendly town. So that's it on that. So.
Thank you.
Now we will be beginning our 3-minute crossfire.
I have nothing.
You don't have anything?
No.
Okay. Well, right now, being the third largest, I'm going to spend the time, being the third largest growing city in the state of Florida, we're getting beat on pretty hard, too, with our building department. But, you know, growing pains is always when it is. We just hired, not too long ago, we hired another inspector, working hard at that. I really believe when it comes to the people that actually work for the city, this is the year. We finally got it with $1.5 million. We're not pulling money out of the enterprise fund anymore. Now is the time to spend the money to bring more employees here, especially when it comes to sewage and stuff like that. I brought it up on the dais a month ago, and we need more employees. It is where it is. The merit raises are here now. We need more employees, and we're a growing town. We got to stay with it. Okay.
Thank you both. We're moving now to closing statements. Mr. Coleman.
Are you going to give me 2 minutes or 4?
I will give you 2 minutes.
Once again, thank you all for holding this tonight. Marlo and Ms. Baker, thank you. Start it now. I know I've made mistakes. I've learned from them in the last 4 years. Wow, I mean, the first 2 years you're a rookie. In turn, I believe they've made me a better commissioner and the best candidate for Group 1. I hope I've been able to convince you that I am the best candidate for the job. If you are happy with the direction that we've been heading, I'm asking for your vote April 10th and the opportunity to serve you and more for 2 more years and to make the city the envy, Mayor Marlowe, of every other municipality in North Florida. Also, Riley Brianna Coleman, I'm so sorry. I know it's your sweet 16th birthday, but that's how dedicated I am to the city. Please forgive me, and I'll cook you the biggest steak this weekend. And to my son, Reese Coleman, I know it was your senior night. Your mom had to walk you like she was a single parent across the field. Thank you for understanding, and thank you for listening to me tonight, and I really hope I get your vote come April 10th. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know a lot of attention has been played to my political affiliation. This is a non-affiliated race. We're all here. We're all participating because we love Newberry and want something more for it. We want to see Newberry be the best Newberry it can be. I want to see Newberry be the best Newberry it can be. I moved here because we have 3 excellent schools. We have a great community. I've been involved on planning and zoning. I've been volunteering on the board for TenCan. I try to participate as much as possible in our community because this is where my home is. I do think that what I bring to the table is somebody who's detail-oriented. I like to research the facts. I like to look into issues. I want to bring to the table somebody who's willing to know not only what goes on in our community, but what goes on in the county and the state and how it affects our community. I think we should be more involved with the school board. We should have people in Newberry, our commissioners or a commissioner, who's attending the school board meetings and knows what's going on and how it will affect our schools, and bring a voice for Newberry to these other entities in Alachua County so that we are part of the process and we are active in the process and they respect us for being a part of that process. I think too often what we're reduced to is what the county commission has said, that we're land barons, that we're money grabbing, and that's unfortunate because we are not those things, and we are more than that, and we are an asset to Alachua County, even though we're small. And I would hope that by being voted into a commission seat, that I will be able to bring somebody who is well-spoken and committed and wants to work with these entities to make a better Newberry. So I look forward to seeing you on April 10th at the voting booth, and I hope you will vote for me.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Well, this concludes our program for tonight. We'd like to thank everyone for coming out, including our candidates, and for all of you that have attended tonight. We'd like to remind you that Group 2 will be Thursday night here at 7 p.m., and please drive safely. Also, we urge you to take the next step and vote to demonstrate that democracy is still alive and well in the city of Newberry. Please vote on Tuesday, April 10th. The polls will open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and the voting takes place at the municipal building. Thank you all.